Hey everybody, I'm Lady Solavine and welcome to my realm of purpose. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about Solas's character. By a little, I mean a lot. Specifically, what we can infer about him from his companion quest. This is the first video in a character storytelling analysis series, which is basically going to be my love letter to Dragon Age's writing. Well, BioWare's writing, I suppose. And none of you can stop me. Except maybe the police, apparently. So this is going to be a character analysis deep dive. And when I say deep dive, I mean a deep dive. I want to go over individual things surrounding a character because I have a good bit to say about them. Whether it be specific scenes, a relationship arc, a quest, or whatever. Starting with my favourite character in the entire series. Big surprise, it's Solas. There will likely be a bunch of videos about the Dreadfluff on this channel from this point onward, you know, considering Veilguard coming out. Whether you like him or you hate him, I don't think anyone can legitimately say that he's a badly written character. I think we can all agree that Weeks did a really good job. Now, as some of you may know already, I am a heartbreak, ride or die Solasmancer. However, I do want to just let you guys know that unless the content I'm covering involves his romance, I'll be covering his character from a less biased perspective. If you're here just for character insight, don't worry, there'll be no fangirling over eggs in this video. And I'll probably say at the start, this is me going into Solasmancer territory. But for this video, no Solasmancer talk. There will be none, it's just character insight. Today we will be covering Solas's companion quest, Measuring the Veil, and everything that the writing implies about his character at this early point in the game. It tells us a lot about his character before he establishes any kind of solid opinion of, you know, the people he works with in the Inquisition, his relationship with the Inquisitor. I think it's fascinating to see such an early quest that tells us so much about him before he forms a solid opinion. Whether you go into a romance with him, whether or not you develop a friendship, or whether or not you just end up in a very... it's not a rivalry. Or whether or not he gets validated in what he already believes about people. So what we need to understand early on, essentially what he told us in Trespasser, is that at this point early on in the game, he does not see everyone around him as actual people. We can see this from the writing and we can see this as well in the writing of The Masked Empire, also written by Weeks. Solas at this point is 100% manipulative Dreadfluff mode, you know? So I just think this quest implies a lot about his character and what he's doing, so we'll go into that. Now, Measuring the Veil is a minor personal quest, or as it's called, a companion quest, for Solas in Dragon Age Inquisition. If you hear that, it's my glasses. I shift them while I talk. Most companions in Inquisition get 2 personal quests, one major and one minor. Typically, the major quest will involve an important event for the character and a cutscene with some emotional drama, and it usually means you and your Inquisitor influence this person's life in some significant way, as well as rounding out their character arc for the game. So it's an Act 2, Act 3 kind of quest. It's later on. The minor quest, as I call it, is more so about going into the world and just doing stuff for the companion that nets approval. These quests seem inconsequential, but there's a lot to pull from them analysis-wise, especially for Solas. So examples of these kind of quests, just so you know, is Cassandra's is finding and killing rogue mages and Templars. Varric's is finding and destroying Red Lyrium. Blackwall's is finding warden camps and artifacts. Vivienne's is finding lost or stolen circle books, and Dorian's is finding and killing Venatori agents. Characters who do not have this quest type are Cole, Sarah, and Iron Bull. Solas's companion quest is Measuring the Veil, as I mentioned before. He asks you to help him find elven artifacts that, when activated, strengthen the veil in the area surrounding it. This leads to another quest from the War Table, which involves taking mages from across Ferelden and Orlais to find a center point, a weak point. It's a bit weird, and it doesn't lead anywhere, but that after quest, it exists, is all I'll say about it. So this quest triggers after you visit the hinterlands for the first time. You can go to the Black Emporium and come back, it won't trigger. It has to be come back to Haven to talk to Spolas? To Spock to Spolas. You speak to Spock. You come back to Haven to speak to Solas. Upon this, he mentions that he senses an intriguing artifact in the hinterlands, one that was used by the ancient elves.
As I explored the Fade, I felt the presence of an intriguing artifact in the hinterlands. If you are willing, I would like to locate it. I have marked its location as best I could determine.
We'll talk later.
Goodbye.
Firstly, he isn't prompted to talk about this by your Inquisitor. He brings it up on his own, and it doesn't lead to any further dialogue or follow-up questions. It's just, here's the thing, do it. Or don't. Your choice. Which I think speaks a lot to Solas's headspace concerning these early days of the Inquisition and his feelings towards you, the Inquisitor. In some ways, I feel it's a bit of a test to see if you're the kind of person to investigate, to help someone else out, but with a carrot dangling on the end of a stick kind of vibe. There's this thing out there, maybe it'll be useful, that kind of thing. It's not friendly, but it's an assessment. Solas doesn't need you to do this. It's something helpful to the both of you in your common goal of sealing the rifts and healing the veil, as well as protecting innocents, spirits, as well as physical people. It's this detached but informative quest he gives. If you help, he knows you're inquisitive, you actually listen to his input, and you put his ideas, his words, into action, which I think is something he values above all else. Solas is a person who likes to be listened to be heeded on his advice, above all else. This quest is also 100% optional, and some people might consider it tedious. You don't really get anything out of it, honestly, other than Solas's approval, and some extra dialogue, and the vague notion that you're helping heal the sky in this rather, honestly, insignificant way. But it infers a lot about your character, your Inquisitor, to Solas, in this really subtle way. Basically, if you don't do this, you don't listen to him, you don't care for his advice, you don't put effort into going out of your way to help. That's the knowledge that he gets out of you, and what I believe he intended by telling you about these artifacts. I should clarify, I mean whether or not you do the first artifact activation. After that, you just randomly come across them in new areas, and those are kind of just, meh, do it if you want. I get it if it's a hassle. While you do get further approval from activating more of them, he doesn't really say much about it. He's just like, look, another artifact. Excellent, we did a good job. But he doesn't disapprove of you not doing it. I hope that makes sense. Ultimately, what this quest is Solas testing the water with your personality, your nature, whether he can manipulate you in some way. Whether you're helpful, curious, and above all else, willing to go out of your way to do something for him, because he asked you. A lot of early Solas banter and conversations with Inquisitor are somewhat of an assessment we're not really privy to. By which I mean, Inquisitor doesn't realise he is assessing you. Obviously, because nobody knows he's the Dreadwolf. He's just giving people little snippets to test them in these roundabout but kind of clever ways. And when you, the player, realise this in a meta sense, it's just so interesting how much you notice. It just infers a lot about his character, mostly that he has some serious trust issues and is 100% willing to manipulate you to do things, or assess whether or not he can trust you to listen to him and do things. It's all about control. How much control does he have around you? Are you the type of person who's going to go out and do whatever the hell you want, regardless of what advice other people give you, or will you actually listen to people and do this thing? That's why I think the value of this side quest, this companion quest, is so valuable, because it's optional. It doesn't do much in the grand scheme of things, but I think it gives that little snippet into Solas' character, as well as other similar quests that achieve some other kind of goal in the narrative. But yeah, I really appreciate this kind of writing.
According to my research, the ancient elves may have set up wards near here. If we can find the artifacts they used, it may help strengthen this area against tears.
What's interesting is how matter-of-fact he is about this. He's got no real emotional investment in this, it seems. At least perceivably. It's simply a job to do. As I said before, there's a sort of detachment going on. He's tempting us with information about this artifact, instead of going for this empathetic, emotional approach. I do think on some level this comes from Solas's early belief that people of current Thedas aren't really people, just faint shadows of what would have been people in another life. He doesn't regard you as severely emotionally intelligent, or something to that effect, hence why he's saying, this is a thing, it is useful to us, it's over there, and not, this artifact has an intriguing history and purpose. If we use it, less people might die from demons. That kind of thing. I think sterile is the word I want to use to describe how he talks about this to us. It very much comes across as like an experiment of sorts, a social kind of experiment is the best way I could describe it. It's a little bit out of place when you know as much as obsessed people like me know about this character, about this story. I do want to point out how he mentions it belonged to and was used by the ancient elves as wards, that in this situation can be used to strengthen the area against tears. Given that the Fade was once everywhere, I'm curious how these would have been used by the ancient elves. Was it to ward off demons? Were they alarm systems of some kind? I'm completely unsure. It's just curious how they work with the Veil, when the Veil was something that came after fen'harel. Though maybe this is just part of his design, who knows. Then when we approach the area, approach these ruins, we find a Dalish mage called Miris fighting demons. We can let her go at it, or we can help her. There's two different versions of how this interaction goes with her, but basically she is here to find the same artifact you are. If you're playing as a non-Dalish Inquisitor, she will lie to you about what she's doing. Funnily enough, Solas calls her out on this.
I left in service of my clan and saw that great tear in the Veil on my journey. I know more of magic and the Veil than any Shemlin, so I hope to help.
Fen'harel, Dalen.
We should keep moving.
fen'harel Dalen, meaning, you lie, child, little one. Which, for context, is actually really sinister. In the Masked Empire, Miris was the first of Clan Vernen. And for reference, Clan Vernen were kind of assholes. Like, disturbingly so. I might talk about Dalish interpretations of fen'harel in another video soon, but let's just say I completely get why Solas hates them. Anyway, Solas says basically here that she is lying, fen'harel, although you could interpret harel to mean to deceive or to trick. But basically, you're not telling us the truth, sunshine, is what he's saying. Solas says this to her, knowingly, because of Felasan, who was an elven character who aided Briala and her party during the events of the Masked Empire. He was, in fact, an agent of fen'harel all along. In fact, he was a friend of him. And we can ascertain that Felasan probably told Solas about this, hence why Solas knows she's lying about what happened. Basically, Clan Vernen summoned this demon, choice spirit, Imshale. They trapped him, and he killed her clan when he got out of his binding. The disturbing part is the connection to Felasan, namely because, spoiler, Solas killed him at the end of that book because he refused to betray Briala, and believed that the people of modern Thedas were real people. They weren't just shadows of what once was or could be. So it's just a subtle dark Solas moment, since we're getting a reminder of what his goals are, and the fact that he sees the people around him as lesser beings. Also, that he killed his friends so easily because he became a liability to his plans. He believed that the people were real people. And he's just so casual about this, even though it's an acknowledgement of Felasan, someone he trusted and presumably cared about. It's just exemplary of Solas, fen'harel, the Dread Wolf, in this current headspace, this early on version of him before he gets to know the people around him. This man would sell your soul for a goddamn peanut if it aided his goals.
And Duran Atishan. I did not expect to see another Dalish blood here. My name is Miris. By your weapons, I see you come ready for battle. Perhaps we face a common enemy in these demons.
Are you fighting the demons on your own?
Fighting the demons is pointless. There will always be more, and I have no means of closing the rifts. But I have heard of elven artifacts that measure the veil. They may tell us where new rifts will appear. I was not expecting so many demons, however. I believe one of the artifacts is nearby. Can you help me reach it?
It sounds worth investigating.
Thank you. It shouldn't be too much farther ahead.
If you are playing a Dalish Inquisitor, she will tell you the truth and generally be open with you about who she is and why she's there. Not really much to say about that. Solas offers no commentary on it. He's just, okay, I'm here. After meeting her, you can have her tag along for this quest, since she's here for roughly the same reasons you are. When you approach the ruins, the entrance is blocked by a mass of rubble. If Solas is the only mage in the party, she says something interesting to him.
We'll need focused magical energy to get by. You, Flatear, can you manage it?
Manuvinen, Dalen.
She says flat ear, which when I first played I didn't think much of. I'm like, oh, okay. But looking back on it, it's like, wow, you bitch. So flat ear is a slur used by the Dalish to refer to elves who are not Dalish. It's derogatory and meant to infer a sense of inferiority in elves who have submitted to human society, hence their ears being flat, which we might guess to mean your ears aren't pointy or prominent. You might as well be human, or, like wolves or dogs, having flat ears can indicate a sense of submission or weakness, or non-familiarity, defensiveness. It implies a good few things. Flat ear. That's what Miris called Solas, aka fen'harel, and his response?
Manuvinen, Dalen.
He answers, once again politely, in fluent elven, and it 100% comes across as a subtle warning. Very subtle. For reference, it roughly means, as you wish, child, little one. He's telling her, with that simple sentence, I'm not ignorant, I know more than you think I know, and I am choosing to be helpful. I'm choosing to be polite. Going so far as to call her Dalen, meaning child or little one. He's taking a firm position as an elder in this situation, to a first of the people, someone who was going to be keeper, who very well could still be a keeper in a clan. It's a level of warning, yes, but it's also Solas showing his true colours, a prideful, I know more than you, fuck around and find out kind of attitude person. She just asks him to do this most insulting way possible, because she doesn't help with anything else magical in these ruins. She just kind of lets him take the brunt of it. And I believe she does it because in terms of mana, she's probably very drained, and she just wants him to do all the heavy lifting, magic-wise. And she wants to lord over someone she initially sees as her inferior. If you're playing a Dalish mage, she will not ask you to do these things. She will ask him. She's making a statement, and it's pretty damn obvious. She'll ask another mage there, if you have one. She wants to assert some authority, and Solas just snatches it back with a quick, almost cheeky response. I love it. I also want to point out that during this quest, his approval does not change if you ask her to leave or if you attack her. Nor does he comment on it. He does not care whatsoever about this woman's fate. He really just doesn't like the Dalish. In fairness, Miris comes from a clan that told Brialla, when she asked for help, that it's best if everyone who wasn't Dalish just died. That is the best way that they can help the people. I can't recall if it was specifically her that said it, but she definitely comes across as someone who would say that, and it was definitely a member of her clan. Basically, this is just an insight into what Solas has had to contend with from the Dalish. And that's if he doesn't approach them as fen'harel. Imagine the response if they knew. I think this actually plays into Solas' role as a trickster god. I know he's not actually a god, but let's just roll with that for a minute. Assessing those around him through deception and manipulation to see their true nature, if they are worthy of trust or disdain, worthy at all of his time and empathy. And from this interaction, it seems like Solas has a fair reason to have his biases, not to excuse his behaviour, but at least shows where he's coming from. It's not coming from nowhere. I think actually that this is why his relationship with the Inquisitor is so essential, especially if it's a Lavellan, an elf, who is as close to his people as any of them get. More on their relationship in a different video though. What I do wish was available in this scene is the option to either agree with Muris in trying to belittle Solas, or to back him up, especially if it's a Lavellan who, at least with Milefea, would be like, whoa, the hell? This is my ally here, how dare you talk to him like that? You know, call out your fellow Dalish, particularly if you go through the game with the intent of befriending or romancing him. That would have been a really nice detail if they had added that in, just so Solas can see who you are, what your morals are, to see that you're unwilling to sit by and let one of your people mock someone for circumstances of birth or choice of lifestyle. But we don't get that option. Inquisitor just remains silent. Once you enter the ruins, you encounter Veilfire for the first time. Well, presumably for the first time. Which is this magical greenish fire that burns as memory of fire in places where the veil is thin, rather than real fire. It can be used to scry hidden messages in runes, as well as light up the area you're in, as fire would. What's interesting is that Solas states that he has heard of it, but never seen it before. And Solas is someone you need to take at his word, at face value. While he's deceptive, he is not an outright liar. You will hear that a lot from a lot of different people, but he does not lie. He hides the truth, or he words things in a way that make you think something different. You really need to just take him at face value. And when he does lie, he's pretty awful at it. So if he says he's never seen Veilfire before, that's super interesting, because I believe him, and he's never seen it before. But he's heard of it. I don't know what that means. I don't have words, I just have a big question mark in my head. What does that mean, Solas? You've never seen Veilfire before, but you've heard of it. What do you mean? I do also want to point out that this is the first time he's showing some sort of emotion concerning what you're exploring. Not including the snark Maris got out of him, he's genuinely curious, he wants to explore this, like, hey, this is interesting, let me talk about it for a hot minute.
That's not normal fire.
I have heard of this but never seen it before. It is called Veilfire. It is a form of sympathetic magic, a memory of flame that burns in this world where the veil is thin.
He slowly slips in what he's interested in, what he enjoys talking about, and Gareth David Lloyd does a brilliant job with the voice acting. Just superb. Now, when you find the artifact, you activate it.
Yes, the wards are helping to strengthen the veil. This area should be safer for travelers now.
Solas finally makes a more empathetic comment about how it works. I do feel like he wants people to not be harmed by rifts, but he's telling you specifically that now, almost as a reward after his assessment. You helped. Therefore you got a reward in the form of, you did a good thing, people are safer. Well done, child, you did good. Speaking from a psychoanalysis kind of perspective, most people like being reminded that they matter, that they did something good that impacts others in a positive way. And knowing Solas, I'd say this is also some subtle manipulation on his part. Not necessarily a negative one, he is just saying, well, we did this a good thing, yay. I definitely interpret it as something that he's saying because he knows you're gonna associate him with this positive reaction. Kind of like getting approval from your boss, from your parent, from a friend. If that makes sense, it's like you've gotten someone's approval because you've done a thing that makes you feel good and you associate that with them. That's the interpretation I go with this, and yes, I'm probably going too deep into it, but that's just, from a writing perspective, that's just how I see that scene. He also gives literal approval, so it's a point in his good book.
Well, that should prove useful. And it seems the ancestors left something for me as well. Interesting. I believe our alliance is concluded. Go in peace, stranger.
The quest ends as Maris finds an amulet, laying claim to it as the ancestors leaving something for her to find. You have a few options about how to proceed with this. You can let her keep the amulet. You can attack her, which is bloody hilarious. You can convince her yourself to give you the amulet. You get approval from Solas. It's a pretty compelling argument, especially from a Lavellan. Or you can select Solas to answer, who will talk his way into getting that amulet. I don't know if this is purely a gameplay mechanic or if it's implied that Inquisitor gives Solas a nudge or a look, but it could also be you simply doing nothing and allowing him to speak in this situation. These conversation options were always kind of weird to me. I do appreciate that companions can contribute to conversations that you are having out in the world. It makes them feel like they're not just there as your backup, they actually are part of the world. But I just kind of hate the fact that I have to select that they say something. It implies I'm giving them a look or nudge, but I don't know for sure, and it just ruins the immersion because I'm sitting there thinking about it like, did my Inquisitor just tell them to say something, or did I just say nothing and they said something? I don't know which it is. Anyway, Solas can speak to Maris again, if prompted in this way, and he once again speaks in Elven.
Mahalani, Maglandeva, vi enasalin.
Aye. Perhaps you're right. Here, take it. Go with Mithal's blessing.
This translates to, you help, you believe, faith, path of victory. He speaks very briefly, and we can probably guess that this is either or both, that he's speaking simply to her, because to him she is a Dalen, and because he just doesn't actually want to have a conversation with her, because she's a bit of a bitch. So we can guess that a more fluid translation could be something like, you will help, you have faith, you believe. I like to think this is a subtle warning from Solas, basically, if you know what's good for you, you'll do what I want. Perhaps it's even a nod to the idea that she is a Dalish first, who would have been Keeper, who is meant to protect her clan, especially from the Dreadwolf. It's a, do this and you can go / part ways from me without harm. Now I purposefully left out the last part of this translation, Vir Enasalin. That's because this translation doesn't really have a direct word-for-word equivalent. It's a bit more complicated than that. Vir typically refers to a spiritual path, a spiritual journey of learning, of following a way. Something like Andrul's Vir Tanadal, or The Way of the Free Trees, or Salaz's Vir Atishan, or Way of Peace, or Mithal's Vir Abelasan, or Way of the Place of Sorrows. It's something to learn, to meditate on, to live by. It's not merely a path or journey, it's an undertaking. Enasalin means victory, but that's also a little more complicated, as it's a word heavily associated with the arcane warriors / knight enchanters. The knight enchanter class was called Duthena Enasalin, meaning knowledge that led to victory. In the codex entry from DA2, Enasalin, you learn of armour owned by the ancient elves who were arcane warriors, specifically Enasalin Abelas, meaning sorrowful victory, referring to those who guarded the ancient elves who had entered Uthenera with their lives, expecting to die in that service. So Enasalin is a word that carries a lot of weight. Vir Enasalin, an undertaking or contemplation of victory, to complete a duty with absolute devotion, to live by it. It is a warning, and to a degree flattery. Mahalani, Maglandeval, Vir Enasalin. You will help, you have faith, contemplate your duty with absolute devotion and live by it. I may be going a bit overboard with that translation, but I like doing that, and it bothers me when I don't have answers, and it's vague. I like contemplating this stuff. Basically, Solas is telling her to be helpful and remember her place, as a warning and a reminder of the arcane warriors, of duty and devotion, and to let her know he knows this. His words were chosen wisely, and he's been calling her Dalen this entire time, letting her know he's not taking her bullshit, and he's the superior between them. With Vir in a Celine, he's reminded her to respect her ancestors, respect this place, respect him, respect her elders. She submits and gives him the amulet before parting ways with our party. A last thing I want to point out is that if you do choose to attack Maris, she says,
Give me whatever it is you found there.
I should have expected this. May the dread wolf take you. Ah!
And I just think that's hilarious given who is with you. Maris also acts completely different about the artifact compared to Solas. She says, "Can you help me?" and "Thank you," and "I did this, there's that," and blah blah blah. Whereas Solas is much more, "There's an elven artifact, it can do this." That's the difference I was referring to earlier in this detached demeanour about this quest. Maris is being a bit manipulative, but she's a lot less subtle about it. After this, if Solas is in the party and you come across one of these artifacts again, he tells you he senses it and you can go activate them around Southern Thedas to strengthen the Veil. You get "Solas slightly approves" every time you do this. And after about 10 activations, you gain the War Table mission, Measure Veil Strength, with a letter from Solas which reads, "Inquisitor, you have activated a number of elven artifacts used to detect the magical energies of the Veil. Individually, such readings have been helpful. If we can coordinate measurements of all the artifacts simultaneously, however, I believe we may be able to uncover rifts that may not have even opened yet. I have drafted a proposal for how we might use Inquisition mages across Orlais and Ferelden to activate these artifacts in a coordinated fashion, if you think that it might be useful. Solas." This leads to you going to an unopened rift, fighting some demons, and closing the rift. No comments from Solas, no special rewards, just another fight. It's very anticlimactic. But the overall takeaway from this quest is that Solas is actively trying to fix things, with your help. It goes from, "You can go check out this thing in the Hinterlands, by the way," to, "You can rally mages across all Southern Thedas to locate unopened rifts that could tear at any moment." It just comes across as the lengths of Solas's influence and manipulation. I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just very good at getting across what he wants and getting other people to do what he wants. Starting subtle to basically commanding the south of Thedas for his endeavours. It speaks a lot to his character, especially in how this never really gets brought up. Nobody really talks about it, and it's just a very, not underwhelming quest, both in the narrative sense as well as in the meta sense. It's just, that is his power. To pull the strings with nobody thinking twice about it. It's something you don't talk about, it's something that goes unnoticed, and it is. It's just incredibly well written, and I don't know if it was intended to come across in all the ways that I've described, but that's just how I've interpreted it. Interpreted it? Yes. I also want to point out, just really quickly, that a lot of people are theorising that activating all these artifacts is going to somehow has some unintended consequence, like Solas is actually using this to bring down the Veil. Well, I don't believe that. I think this is just a one-off quest that just implies stuff about his character. I don't think there's anything more to it. But yeah, that's all I have to say about his companion quest. I will be going into other things concerning his character, concerning other characters. If you have a request, I will take it into account and look into it, and a video will come out. I just love doing these kinds of videos because I love talking about writing. Hence why I talk a lot about lore. It's less so much about the mystery and stuff. I just like talking about well-written things, stuff that, the kind of stuff you would write about in English class. So yeah, I'm curious what you guys think about this quest. Is there any others that you think were better written? Or is there some other topic you would like me to talk about? Just put it down in the comments. I read them, I promise. That is all I have for today, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great day.
Get out of here. Things are dangerous enough without another mad mage.
Then may the dread wolf take you, fool.